Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining us today on Talks on Tuesdays. And this is a forum that was created a while back by Mary Chase, who's off gallivanting around England today and couldn't join us, and myself and Chelsea and Julie to have a place that was kind of a safe place for us to talk and share ideas and just think about and share things that are kind of off the beaten track, I guess. Things that are just a little bit out of mainstream consciousness. And so we take turns hosting. Today's my day. We'll be here for about 30 minutes. And I'd like to welcome Gino, Duran, Gordy, and Louis Therese. Thanks for joining us, and anybody else who will come in. And those of you on YouTube who will be watching us later, be sure to like us and subscribe to our channel. And we appreciate that. And today, my topic is what I've been and what I still am, or something like that. I can't quite remember how I termed it, but I got it from this book by Rupert Spira, The Art of Peace and Happiness. And I just fell in love with this book. And it's the kind of book where I can read like one or two sentences and then just want to sit and just percolate with the thoughts. Hi, Renee. And one of the things that we talk about a lot with the Reconnective Healing life, and it's spelled out also very clearly with this in this book, is the fact that we are basically like a universal consciousness that manifests as individuals. And oftentimes it's hard for us to really imagine that. And it's easy to kind of talk about it and say, oh yeah, I know we're all one. But then we go around our everyday life and forget. And just my experience with Reconnective Healing over the years, and then reading Rupert Spira really helped to bring it home. And I thought that before we get into our discussion, I just wanted to share one little bit that keeps bringing me back to who I was and how I've changed, and yet how I've stayed the same. Because, when we think about, at least for me, when I was reading this, when I think about myself when I was a kid, and then I think about myself now, obviously I've gone through a lot of changes. I've grown up, I've learned things that I didn't know then, but that deep center core of me seems exactly the same. And it's like I just recently turned 70, and it's like, oh God, I still feel like I'm like 25-year-old, that 25-year-old Barbara. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. And I'd like to I'm going to share my screen because I wrote this so we can all follow along, but I'd like everybody to just kind of take a moment to just take a deep breath and find that kind of center spot, that deep place. You can follow along reading with me or just listen, either way. But let's just find that core self, that place we call home, as I read this. The search for happiness, which is another name for unhappiness, is simply the forgetting of ourself. Now, what is it that can forget the presence of ourself? Obviously not ourself, because ourself cannot not know itself. It is the knowing of itself. What other kind of self is there that could forget the eternal nature of peace and happiness, which is our true self, aware presence? Only an imaginary one, and that is exactly what the separate self is. Or sometimes we call it the finite self. The imaginary self is made out of thought that imagines it. It is an imaginary, thought-made self that imagines that peace and happiness are not present now in the current circumstances. If peace and happiness are not present now, where might they be found? Not in the not now, only in the not now. Time is the name we give to the imaginary place that is not now. And then a few paragraphs later, it says, if we understand experientially that this now is the only now there is, and that all the peace, happiness, and love that can ever be are present here right now, right here and now, in this current situation, what would become of our search? And so with that, I'm going to stop sharing and open the floor to what some of you guys, first of all, I guess my question is, does any of this make sense to you? And, what are your thoughts on it?
I'd probably have to read it a few more times for myself. I mean, yeah, that's all I have to say for right now.
Okay. And that's one reason why I had it on the share screen, because it's a mouthful, a number of mouthfuls, and then I have Dusty kind of jumping around on my lap, and so I missed some words and misspoke a few things. So
Yeah, Barbara, I can speak a minute.
yeah.
Yeah, as I was listening and reading it also, I felt the, struggle of myself, of many human beings throughout life, whether they're consciously or not consciously trying to aspire to be happy and aspire to be whole and all these good things. That they're doing that, and they can do that for years and decades even, until they come to a point, if they are conscious of finding this peace, living in the now, the being and all that. And then they can look back and see all that they did, which was not for naught, but I think there are steps to get you to that wisdom. But all the wise words that you read over the years and everything, they sounded great, but somehow we didn't work with them, really. We'd put that book down and go to the next book, you know?
Mm.
So yeah, it just reminded me of a journey to being wise and whole.
It reminds me of how it really is a gift to come in to this plane and have to reveal and remember it all. And a lot of times we don't realize it's a gift until we've reached the prize or whatever, but there's reason behind it all. Compassion, learned compassion, not only for ourselves but for others.
Yeah. And when I heard you say behind it all, I thought of the peace and happiness that is really behind it all. And these imaginary selves that we create as us that feel so real. And our journey of life as we move along the linear path.
See, that's what I was thinking about. When I was young, I was very blocked as far as emotions, feelings. I didn't have, I can't even say if I was happy or not. I think I was so filled with anxiety that I didn't know what I was. So my journey was, I think that from then until now, especially getting involved with Reconnective Healing, for me, it just brought a different life vocabulary, expansion in the way I think and what I've explored and what I know. Again, what you just read, I would have to read it like really slow for me. You know, that's what, and I can't digest it right now, but I can kind of share just how I am now compared to the way I was. And to the way I was, it's hard to say because, you know, you've had this long life. So, you know, you've made many changes. You, meaning everybody, you know, has made many changes to get to where you are now. And I would say I am now more in the now than I ever was. And that took a long time. So, yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful, Julie. I love that share. Thank you. And I know sometimes I talk with some friends of mine about the journey and the learning and the opening and the realizations. And we look at each other and think, oh God, why did it have to take us so long to get here? And it's like, I'm so grateful that I made it to this point, even, you know, there's still so much to understand, but I am just so grateful that I have the knowing and understanding and realizations that I do.
For me, you guys, and gals, all the shares, and Barbara, what you just read, what comes up is lately, like the last several months, what I've been encountering are the hypertensions that exist specifically between parents and kids and within families. And I'm choosing that phrase hypertension specifically because I know what you all know what that means. And it's something that's passed down in my family. Hypertension is one of those things that's inherited. And what I found is the oneness, accepting the oneness, knowing the oneness it's such an antidote to it, to all the hypertension that we have between us and the world. And I'm going to say specifically, just tuning into knowing that you're one with stuff that isn't hypertense. Not only am I one with the hypertense stuff, but I'm also one with the really, I guess, healthy connections between people, and the happy and non-judgmental connections between parents and kids and within families. And any way that anybody can get there and get to that point, and Barbara, you know, that what you shared and what everybody has shared so far is a beautiful way to get to that. And I'm very grateful for it.
And I think I speak for all of us when I say we're grateful that you're here, because I love your shares too, and you always have a nice perspective on things, and I know for me it gives me things to think about during the week, as actually everybody, every single person on this call. You know, we've got such wisdom amongst us, and yet it's easy, you know. I mean, it's just another thing in the book he talks about is like the eternal now, and what I mentioned about time. Time is the name we give to the imaginary place that is not now, but there is really no not now because it's all now. And he talks someplace else in the book about, see if you can like go back 2 seconds and be, but you can't because you're here, you're not there, or go forward a minute, you know. It's just impossible because we're always right here now.
Yeah.
Now I understood that. Yeah.
We are right here and now, but on other levels, we are not right here. So we are physically present. Hopefully we are cognitively and consciously present, but emotionally we may not be present. Emotionally, we might be connected to something which may have occurred 30, 40, 50 years ago, and we haven't moved beyond that because we're frozen in time, having experienced something. And I think what I've learned a lot about throughout my lifetime is that, or I'm still learning it now, is that I must choose, really, I must choose my attitude regardless of what it is that I'm experiencing in my life. So that peace or that perspective or that place of grace or the ability to have that discernment or that detachment comes from making a conscious decision that, irregardless of what is taking place, I have to give myself the gift of peace. No one can take it away from me. People can disturb it, people can rain on it, people can shit on it, but I have to give myself the gift of peace because no one can give it to me. And I also have to give myself the gift of grace and forgiveness because no one can grant that to me either. So that, I would say, is the biggest life lesson that I've learned, is that sure, you can reflect backward and you can say, oh yeah, I grew up with alcoholism and I was abused and blah, blah, blah. And those are all true. But I can't sort of toss that in somebody else's court and blame them for where I am now. I have to make a decision. Yes, I lived through it. Yes, I survived it. Yes, it happened, but I can't change it. And I can't change anyone that was part of that or a participant in it. So this is my gift. The present is the gift, and what I do with it is really up to me. So
Yeah,
that's
totally.
helpful.
Exactly. Very nice. Yeah. And a lot of that is really remembering that all that past stuff that you're carrying around is really just imaginary. That you created that, you and others in your life, but basically it's all self-created. But that, and we need that to be here. I mean, that's kind of what we're doing here, I think. You know, you hear none of us get out unscathed. You know, everyone has different issues, but we all have issues. And just remembering to look past, and that peace and happiness is really our true nature. I think that's kind of what I mean when I say how I've changed, but stay the same.
Well, for me too, it's more, what I was thinking is it's more of a, it's more, I keep trying to think of, I keep coming up with, it's more of an awareness that my awareness has expanded to the point where I can see how I feel, or I'm hanging on to something in the past and say kind of what Renee was saying, and then I can just let it go, you know? And then sometimes too, I think that just in my relationship with Reconnective Healing and playing in the frequencies and stuff, I don't even have to think about that stuff because it just disappears, or it, dissolves in a way without having to even go there.
Mm-hmm. You know what, Julie, what that totally reminds me of is the idea of, back to changing and staying the same. And for me, the way I've been enjoying it lately is the changing are the seemingly endless experiences that we just continue to have. And the staying the same is the process of our experiences decomposing. Or I think I guess you could use the word disappearing, but
Dissolved, I said too.
dissolve. Yeah, dissolve. It's quite similar. And that's how we stay the same. That's how we just stay what's true. We stay in wholeness. We stay in precise wholeness and happiness. And just so grateful for those decomposition processes,
Yeah. Barbara, you said the core of who we are, which is what you're
Yeah,
saying. do.
It helps
Yeah.
us stay the core of who we are. Yeah. And it occurs everywhere in nature, and everything stays the core of what it is because of that. Everything in nature goes through an experience, and then that experience decomposes and they stay the core of what they are.
Yeah, that's so
Very-
true. I think it's almost kind of like fractals, you know, you have these different sections of things that may look differently, but they all kind of function in a way the same.
Yeah. And one thing I learned recently that really brought that home for me is fire is the exact opposite of photosynthesis, but they're exactly the same thing. They're just upside down mirror images of each other. And that hit me. I was like, whoa. I mean, talk about something that just it constantly keeping everything at the core.
Yeah.
And it's tight. It's tight. The natural processes are, they don't give in to that. There is nothing else.
But picturing that is beautiful.
Yeah.
Fire, and then, you know, it's so dramatic. And
And it's so
photosynthesis,
simple. Yeah.
which seems so intimate, you know.
Hmm.
And
They're
again,
both
like
very
you say, the
intimate. Yeah.
opposites. Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
What one seems like it's giving life and one seems like it's taking life. But what's the difference? Really?
Well, the difference is that fire is so destructive in such an instantaneous way that it can annihilate life completely in the blink of an eye, where photosynthesis is a sort of regenerative process, which is always ongoing. It's organic. It has a beginning and an end.
Mhm.
Fire has a spark which starts it, but it can certainly powerfully, destroy a huge amount of life in a matter of moments. And I think
And that's our,
we have to be sort of mindful of the fact that everything has sort of an organic way of using, if you think of your life, parts of your life have been recycled, or parts of you and part of what your belief system is now, for example, is based on what you've known, and now you've sort of edited and removed and released part of what doesn't work, and you sort of reconfigured it in a different form. And that process always goes on and on and on. It's like a refining process.
Right. And that's opening your awareness, kind of what Rupert was talking about. You know, we get so caught up in the imaginary, and that's so natural. It's so consuming. And for me, doing things like Reconnective Healing, reading Rupert Spira, just chatting with you guys, it helps to remember that that's not all there is, you know. And when I heard you talking, Darren, about I was just thinking ashes to ashes, dust to dust. And fire is very destructive, but it also is a starting point. It creates a starting point. So it is kind of that cycle that both of you were talking about. We're getting close to the end. Anyone else have any
I just wanted to interject that I keep thinking as I was listening to Renee and then you, Barbara, about reconnective healing, being involved in that, and I always think about the experience of living in the frequencies and what that means for me. You know, like walking down the street and being present and noticing and capturing something that captures your interest and really seeing it, you know what I mean? For me, I can do that more easily in nature, obviously, when I'm walking the dog, you know, and or whatever in the backyard. It's harder to do when you're out and doing, you know, and going to the market and stuff, but still there is always that, if you can bring yourself into the present, it can be pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, you know, the invitation, and it is fun to explore the differences between, we'll say, photosynthesis and fire, because that's what we always want to do first. We always want to take a look at how is everything different. My invitation to myself was, how are they the same? And how is it that we can't have one without the other?
Yeah.
And to me, that makes them more alike than different. And there's that symbiosis that happens that I find healing in.
It reminds me of the chapter that we're reading in Solomon Speaks about there's no what
Distinction in our
There's
differences.
nothing to be gained.
there's
There's
nothing to
nothing to be gained in celebrating our differences.
our differences in how we always are
Yeah.
you know, we want to be different, but we're really all the same. Yes, we're different people, but we're all the same. We're all connected. And that's what that reminded me of. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
is
Hello?
weird to look at fire and look at photosynthesis and go, they're the same. It's a very, very interesting exploration.
And that makes life fun, you know. I think that's that's what we're here for. Is to find
Barbara?
joy.
And I just want to
Barbara?
say,
Yes. Hey,
Renee,
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 we're just about
oh,
finishing
she
up.
has
Did you have something
really
quick
fun.
you wanted to share?
Yes, one of the main reasons I feel that you are not connected to your emotions and to your own self is many times you think in the future or you think back in the past
Right.
and you do not experience the right moment of where you are. And I feel I have learned that one of my greatest advantages for myself is to be present and to absorb everything at the moment at where I am and what I'm doing, and not to let my thoughts drift to the future or to the past. I can say you are kind of unconscious, but and you experience things, but you are kind of unconscious. So it is for me very important in my life that I've learned to be present at every moment.
Yeah.
And that is my learned myself who and what I am really.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. And that's actually a beautiful message to share as we end.
Mm-hmm.
You know, be present in every moment. Gosh, thanks you guys. I appreciate everybody sharing today. We'll see you next week.